On July 2, 1996, at the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute, also known as SETI in New Mexico, scientists started noticing a signal coming from the moon made by an enormous extraterrestrial mothership coming closer to the Earth's atmosphere anytime soon. The SETI alerts the Pentagon immediately to commence an action regarding this global matter. The next morning at the White House, high-class officials of the Pentagon, including Albert Nimziki, Secretary of Defense, discussed the aforementioned matter with the U.S. President Thomas J. Whitmore. They learned that the extraterrestrial mothership is about to enter the Earth's orbit and will release multiple extraterrestrial saucers to spread to most cities worldwide in the next 15 minutes. As the countdown stops, the insane disturbance of the extraterrestrial saucers are detected first in Iraqi airspace, California, Russia, and every city nearby. This insane airspace phenomenon causes panic and fear to the citizens who are completely clueless of what to expect. Meanwhile, Air Force Command commences investigation on the Californian airspace upon orders of Thomas. With no clear visibility, the Air Force Command aircraft sent to investigate the saucer explodes due to gigantic fire created by the saucer. The White House turns into a deafening silent office as multiple commands die on the mission. In fear, Albert begs Thomas to evacuate to safety before Washington becomes the next targeted city of the approaching saucer. Thomas insists on staying to announce to the public not to panic, as he's confident that saucers will not target their city. Within a couple of minutes, Washington City is now covered in total darkness as the extraterrestrial saucer positions on their sky. With Thomas' claims proven wrong, the streets of Washington are in total chaos as cars begin crashing and people panically fleeing. Thomas, assuming once again, believes that the extraterrestrial saucer will not attack and announces the public to not panic once again. He pledges to stay at the White House together with his staff and Pentagon officials to work on their communication to the extraterrestrial beings, or should I say aliens. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, U.S. Marine Captain Stephen Hiller and his girlfriend, Jasmine Debrow, are completely clueless of the ongoing global phenomenon. They believe that they're just experiencing some sort of earthquake until they exit their house and witness the saucer in the sky. Speechless, the couple survey their surroundings and notice their neighbors packing their stuff and escaping the city. In realization, Stephen wears his military uniform to head on the headquarters for duty. On the other hand, Jasmine and her son, Dylan, pack up their things and prepare to leave anytime soon. When night comes, Pentagon officials instantly retrofit aircraft to be used by military officers to get closer to the saucer and attempt to communicate with the aliens. With Pentagon officials and Thomas on a line, military officers inside the retrofitted aircraft alerts them of every movement they make as they approach the saucer. In the meantime, in New York, David Levinson, an MIT-educated satellite engineer and technological expert, discovers that the extraterrestrial saucer's position on some cities worldwide will fire a destructive beam to incinerate all within their scope soon. Concerningly, he informs his workmates to evacuate the city immediately. Also, he alertly contacts Constance Spano, his ex-wife and a White House communications director, to inform her of the incoming attack in Washington, where she currently is. In doubt, Spano assumes that David is being delusional and then hangs up the call. Worried, David swiftly flees to Washington with his father to persuade Spano, Thomas, and other officials to evacuate to non-targeted cities immediately. As David arrives at the White House, he enlightens Spano and Thomas of the saucer's objective that will commence anytime soon. With the ongoing approach of retrofitted aircraft on the extraterrestrial saucer in Washington, Thomas orders the military officers to abort the mission, as aliens are not as friendly as they assume they'll be. With David's claim proven right, the military officer flying the retrofitted aircraft goes incinerated, causing panic to the White House. Consequently, Thomas orders evacuations of citizens, but it is already too late. Left with no other choice, Thomas, Spano, David, and his father, together with White House staff and Pentagon officials, escape Washington through Air Force One. With less than 20 minutes remaining before the saucer's destructive beam launch, David and the rest of the White House official luckily manages to flee away from Washington, heading towards a non-targeted city nearby. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Jasmine, Dylan, and their dog, Boomer, are leaving the city. Expectedly, numerous people are fleeing the city as well, thus making Jasmine and Dylan stuck in heavy traffic near the exact location of the saucer. Now that the countdown before the attack stops, the saucers begin emitting neon green light, which fascinates all the citizens' eyes. Then saucers simultaneously release destructive beams on targeted cities all over the world. Buildings begin falling apart, cars roll over, and people swiftly run away from the saucers. In a matter of minutes, millions of people die and turn into ash, while some manage to survive, including Jasmine, Dylan, and Boomer. They take shelter in a tunnel's inspection alcove, waiting for the after-effect fire to go off. With Washington, Los Angeles, and New York and other targeted cities now left in ruins, survivors start fleeing to non-targeted cities as fast as they can. Jasmine, Dylan, and Boomer ride on a truck and locate other survivors they can find. They drive for hours and save multiple injured citizens. Later on, they come across Marilyn Whitmore, Thomas' wife, who's suffering from excess bleeding. Immediately, Jasmine treats her wound and feeds her with food supplies she can find. When night comes, they rest for a while in the streets of El Toro City. Time passes, morning comes on July 3rd. Steven is worried about his family. He lost contact with them and regrets leaving them all on their own. With his mission prioritized first, he and his unit, Black Knight Fighter Squadron, operate their fighter aircraft to fight the extraterrestrial saucers upon orders of Thomas, who've now landed on a safe city. Confident to win, Black Knight fighters courageously approach the saucer in Los Angeles to fire a missile. Unexpectedly, the missile fails to go through as a protective shield is activated on the exterior of the saucer. Determined, the fighter squadron simultaneously releases missiles to fire at the saucer. Sadly, after numerous attempts, they fail once again. Thomas, on a line, orders the squadron to abort the mission as it will kill them all. Unexpectedly, the saucer launches a swarm of shielded fighters to counterattack the squadron. One after the other, Black Knight fighter aircraft get destroyed from the laser shooting of the shielded fighters. The remaining Black Knight fighters, now being chased by the shielded fighters, attempt to outsmart them yet fail to do so. Jimmy, Steven's best friend, dies right in front of Steven after a shielded fighter shoots on his aircraft. Steven, now the remaining survivor of the Black Fighter Squadron, lures the shielded fighter and blinds its sight with his parachute. The shielded fighter crashes in Mojave Desert and Steven carelessly approaches it. He finds an alien inside the craft and furiously knocks it down. Steven then tiredly drags it from Mojave Desert, going to Area 51, a highly classified United States Air Force facility. In the interval, a group of refugees, including retired combat pilot Russell Koss, now an alcoholic single-step father, drives to Mojave Desert and sees Steven. Russell offers Steven a lift to Area 51, where the rest of the refugees agree to head to as well. On the other hand, due to the failed mission of the Black Knight Fighter Squadron, the Pentagon officials heartlessly suggest to Thomas the launch of a nuclear weapon to the saucer to destroy it, including the survivors near it. David confusingly hears their plan and furiously disagrees with them as there's uncertainty of success and many people will die for nothing. In total silence, Albert reveals to all of them that the government faction has been involved in a UFO conspiracy since 1947 in Area 51. He believes that the discovery of Area 51 50 years ago can be their chance to learn about the objectives of the invaders. Swiftly, David, Thomas, and the Pentagon officials head to Area 51, where Steven and the refugees are coincidentally heading. As they arrive at Area 51, Dr. Brackish Okun welcomes Thomas and the group and introduces to them the now refurbished saucer and 3 alien corpses recovered from the crash in 1947. Thomas curiously asks him if it is possible to kill the invaders with the current technologies they have. Yet, Brackish believes that the aliens' technology is far more advanced, making it impossible for humans to annihilate them. After a while, Steven and the refugees arrive at Area 51 and present the captured alien to Brackish. Quickly, Brackish and other scientists begin to examine the alien, which then wakes up during the operation. Unfortunately, the alien attacks all the scientists and telepathically invades Brackish's mind. Outside the operation room, Thomas and his men witness the death of the scientists. Shockingly, they see the alien alive and controlling Brackish's voice. Thomas attempts to persuade the alien for a truce. However, in response, the alien does not want peace but death of mankind. Then, it launches a psychic attack against Thomas, making the Secret Service agents and military personnel fire a gun to kill the alien. Due to the psychic attack on Thomas, he learns that the invaders plan to annihilate Earth's inhabitants and exhaust its natural resources. Having been left with no other option, Thomas takes the first suggestion of the Pentagon official into consideration. David disagrees with the idea once again, but he cannot stop the president from his final decision because he, himself, has no suggestions to offer. Thomas, now firm to sacrifice tons of survivors near the targeted saucer, reluctantly orders the trial nuclear weapon attack against the saucer in Houston, Texas. After a while, as the nuclear weapons are launched, the saucer is completely covered in thick smoke, making the Pentagon officials rejoice at their assumed victory. Unfortunately, as the smoke disappears, the visibility now shows the unscathed saucer. The nuclear weapon fails to pass through due to saucer's protective shield. Devastated, Thomas aborts the launch of nuclear weapons on other cities as the trial in Houston fails. With David's claim proven right once again, numerous survivors in Houston died for nothing. Meanwhile, Stephen, completely clueless as to whether his family is alive or not, steals an aircraft in Area 51 to attempt to search for them. Upon searching, Stephen manages to find Jasmine together with a handful of survivors, including the injured First Lady Marilyn. They return to Area 51 to get medical attention. Gladly, Thomas sees his wife Marilyn once again. However, the doctor informs him that Marilyn is dying and there's nothing he can do to save her. Emotional, Thomas bids his farewell to her as he weeps and hugs her tight. Shortly after the couple unites, Marilyn dies from excess bleeding. On the next day, July 4th, drunkenly David loses hope in the survival of the remaining humans on Earth. His father, motivating him to move forward and never give up, makes him take inspiration with his words to plan the next fight against the invaders. Shortly, he gathers all the scientists and officials to discuss his plan. As they are all gathered, David enlightens them of the possibility to beat the defense system of the invaders using his computer alone. To be further understood, he demonstrates his plan using the refurbished saucer in Area 51 and a pistol to shoot the can he placed inside the saucer. At first, the bullet fails to go through the saucer due to its protective shield. However, when David places a virus to the saucer system, the second attempt to shoot the can inside the saucer goes through. To make it possible to defeat the invaders, David plans to plant a virus to the extraterrestrial mothership above Earth's surface. If he's successful in doing so, the virus is going to filter down to all the extraterrestrial saucers spread worldwide. In doubt, Albert disproves the success of David's plan as the refurbished saucer in Area 51 has never functioned before. Arrogantly, David manages to operate the refurbished saucer, making Albert speechless. Of course, the saucer needs a pilot to fly, which is why Stephen, well aware of the aliens' maneuvering capabilities, volunteers to fly the refurbished saucer together with David. Thomas, taking a risk once again, approves of David's plan. When Albert arguably claims that the failure of David's plan will cost millions of lives, Thomas immediately fires him because he has been pessimistic the whole time. Now the plan is set, the mission commences. Thereafter, with the use of Morse code, the U.S. military contacts airborne squadrons worldwide to enlighten them with the plan and organize a counteroffense. Russia, China, Iraq, and all cities in the world immediately agreed to the planned attack on the saucer's position to the targeted cities. Due to the Black Knight fighter squadron's failure from the previous mission, the U.S. military has depleted manpower to fly fighter aircrafts, which is why they gather the refugees currently camping outside Area 51 to come forward if they ever have a flying plane experience. One of the volunteers is Russell, who offered a lift to Stephen earlier. He strongly insists on fighting with the invaders as a payback for the torture he went through under them 10 years ago. Thomas, with flight experience, also enlists with the counter-offensive volunteers to fight the invaders. He stands up in front of all the survivors outside Area 51 to motivate them and enlighten them that on the same day as Independence Day, they are to fight for their freedom once again. Citizens rejoice and grow confident that the mission will become successful. Meanwhile, knowing the risks of fighting the invaders, Stephen marries Jasmine with David and Spano in attendance of their ceremony. David and Spano fall in love with each other once again. They learn to communicate and fix their marital issues before it is too late. Later on, David bids farewell to his father and hands him a Bible as a gift. Emotionally, his father utters word to him of how proud he is to be his father. Now that operation starts, Stephen and David fly the refurbished saucer to the Earth's surface. Undetected, the refurbished saucer of Stephen and David manages to land inside the mothership positioned on Earth's orbit. Slowly, David and Stephen surveys the inside of the mothership and discovers thousands of saucers preparing to invade the Earth. Nervously, David, using his computer, connects with the mothership system so he can upload the virus. Successfully, the virus is uploaded. On standby, U.S. airborne squadrons, led by Thomas, readily enter their fighter aircraft. Due to successful installation of virus on the mothership, the U.S. airborne squadrons are now alerted to launch their first missile on the saucer in Houston, as there's no longer protective shields guarding it. Unfortunately, the missile fails to go through as the protective shield of the saucer is not yet deactivated. Dismayed, U.S. airborne squadrons readily abort the mission. Stubbornly, Thomas launches a missile to the saucer once again. Luckily, the missile goes through and the U.S. airborne squadrons begin firing tons of missiles to destroy the saucer. Alerted, multiple shielded fighters from the saucer counterattack the U.S. airborne squadrons. Most of the shielded fighters spread to the cities and remorselessly attack civilians as well. Hastily, citizens panically hide. Some of them frighteningly flee inside Area 51 whilst the other falls dead from the alien ambush. In confusion, U.S. airborne squadrons wonder why they're not making major damage on the saucer. In the meantime, the saucer prepares to release the primary destructive beam underneath. U.S. airborne squadrons gather to launch missiles directly at it once it starts to emit neon green light. Unfortunately, all the U.S. airborne squadron's fighters ran out of missiles except for Russell. Russell, being the last hope, promises to win the fight. However, as he's about to launch the missile, malfunction on the system launch has been detected. Having no other choice, he flies right through the saucer's destructive beam to pawn himself. Unhesitatingly, he decides to sacrifice himself to save humanity. Finally, after numerous attempts in attacking the saucer, it explodes from Russell's attack. With luck now in favor of the humans, the U.S. military alerts airborne squadrons worldwide of the critical weakness of saucers. With that in mind, all the airborne squadrons successfully destroy the saucers on targeted cities and save the citizens. Concurrently, David and Stephen are completely stuck inside the mothership after they plant the virus. The aliens grow doubtful at their saucer as it attempts to escape from its harness. They begin to investigate whether the pilot driving the aforementioned saucer is their ally or not. Left with no other option, David and Stephen reveal their position to aliens before they launch a time bomb and forcibly escape the mothership. Aliens, now well aware of their position, begin chasing them as they exit their way out of the mothership. Luckily, they survive and enter the Earth's surface before the mothership explodes from the time bomb and destroys massive invasion forces. Due to the success of David's plan, humans across the world rejoice. Saucers crash on devastated cities and fragments of the mothership from Earth's orbit begin falling apart. Later on, the name Russell Cass is now recognized as the name of the pilot who made an heroic deed for humanity. Emotionally, his family grows proud of what he did despite having a poor relationship with him. Meanwhile, Citizens of America salutes Thomas and his men for their bravery. Thomas searches for Stephen and David, but learns that the U.S. military lost contacts with them. When the entire room becomes silent, a signal is detected to a remote city. So, Thomas, Spano, and Jasmine head there immediately. Shortly after, Stephen and David, who's making a big entrance in a remote area, reunites with their families once again. Grateful, Thomas congratulates the both of them for the successful mission. The movie ends as all of them watch the fall of the invaders' saucers on Independence Day.